You're listening to the Wise Woman Podcast, Episode 3. I'm your host, Alicia Wilfert, founder of Yoke and Abundance, a leadership, life, and creativity coaching business. This podcast is designed to inspire by introducing you to creative women living abundantly. I hope you'll savor Cynthia's words of wisdom as much as I have. It's an honor to introduce you to my friend Cynthia Reavis. Cynthia has a powerful yet inviting presence. She's a unique individual with a beautiful story to share. I'm certain you'll enjoy Cynthia's wisdom as much as I have. But first, a word from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Cheney Properties. Cheney Properties has specialized in residential and commercial properties in Greensboro since 1982. Personally, when I opened my first business, Greensboro Downtown Yoga, Dawn Cheney was not only excited about my vision and mission, she was a champion for what I was trying to create and ready to offer advice around every turn. The next time I need an office space or commercial property in Greensboro, I'll be calling Cheney Properties. Cheney Properties is excited to support female entrepreneurs in Greensboro, North Carolina. Visit cheneyproperties.com, that's CHANEY, to see what's possible today. Now, on to Episode 3. Can you give me your name?
I'm Cynthia D. Reavis.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And are you comfortable sharing your age?
I'm 57. Yes, I am comfortable. Oh, by the way, I am comfortable. I'm 57 and I'll be 58 in August. So I'm closer to 58 than I am to 57.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
What is it that you do and what's your background? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a licensed financial advisor. I'm a registered investment advisor representative. And I tell people that because I want them to be careful who they get advice from. Because it's very important that a financial advisor is licensed with the federal government, with the SEC, and with FINRA, which is our governing body.
I mean, it's illegal not to, right?
It's illegal not to be licensed and give financial advice, but also that they're registered investment advisors in their state, because then that says they're qualified and able to manage your money and for a fee. So unless you've checked their credentials, or I encourage you to check your financial advisor's credentials, that should be one of the first questions you should ask them is, are they licensed and registered? That's where I am today. I have just a multifaceted background.
I know, I love it. Can you share it?
It's when I look back on it, it's kind of scattered and convoluted, but when I realized where I'm at, it all had a purpose. My background and my formal training is in engineering. So I have a Bachelor's of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from North Carolina A&T State University, but also have an MBA. But I did pure engineering probably all of 5 years. And I came out of college in the early 80s with a mechanical engineering degree, and I was very few, and the first, I think, in my company, the first company I started to work for, I was the first African-American female with an engineering degree.
Wow.
In the company that I worked for. So it opened a lot of doors. It really did. It was a time in when everywhere I went, for the most part, within my professional career, I was a first.
How does that feel?
Scary. Intimidating. But eventually I came into my own, and I developed a sense of self and a sense of confidence. And I started to challenge my peers. I remember distinctly being in a meeting of all white males in a high-tech company, which was not uncommon to be in a room full of all white males engineers. And I remember making a statement, and I was overlooked. And I remember making the same statement again, and I was overlooked. And someone in the room said the same thing I said, and the gentleman next to me said, "That's what Cynthia just said." And the room went quiet. And that was when I knew that I had value, that I had something to bring to the table, and that people need to listen.
Absolutely.
So that was a turning point for me. But to say that I've done everything, not everything, but I've done engineering. I've been in supply chain management. I've been a community leader, an activist. I run my own company, own business as a Mary Kay sales director. And then I did nonprofit work. So I was operations manager for a nonprofit in a community mental health field. And now I'm in financial services.
Incredible.
But it all has kind of gone full circle in terms of everything that I've done has helped me in the work that I do now.
So what made you take the leap from your last position to where you are now? Because it's been a rather recent change, right?
Mm-hmm. It's been within the last 5 years, and it wasn't something that I orchestrated. I'm an only child, and my mom died in 2002. So my dad moved from the Washington, D.C. area, which is where I was born and raised, to North Carolina, which is where he's from and where my mother was from. He retired and decided to retire in North Carolina. And I decided that as an only child and that my dad was getting older, that it would probably behoove me to move here to be with him. So the career I'm in now wasn't one that I necessarily orchestrated or planned. It happened that way. So when I decided that I was going to move here to be with my dad, I quit my job. I was the operations manager for a nonprofit, and I sold my home and I put all of my belongings in a U-Haul, and we moved here, and I moved here. So my plan, and I always have a plan, my plan was to find a good corporate job, work in it for the next 20 years and retire. You know,
What's the saying? We plan and God laughs.
I love that. That's great. And that's exactly what he did. He said, okay, let's see how that works for you. And so I strived for about a year to find that perfect job that I was looking for, and nothing materialized. Doors opened and doors closed, doors opened and doors closed. And so God said to me, and you'll find out throughout most of this interview that I'm very spiritual, I'm God-centered. And he said, so now that you've done all that, quit striving and let me handle it. So I took a job in a boutique in the community, did extremely well because, oh, by the way, I also did some work in retail. I did about 8 years in retail while I was working and building my Mary Kay business. I worked at Neiman Marcus for about 8 years.
Which those things probably went hand in hand
really well. They really did. They really did. And some other things spun off of that. But what he said to me was, you've got a sales background, so just park yourself over in that boutique for a while. Do what you do. Start to network and get connected, and then let me handle this job thing. And so I did that for about a year. And I got a LinkedIn email from a large broker that said, we're looking for women to join our company and to become financial advisors. And I ignored it. I literally let it sit in my inbox. And I kept working at the boutique and kept networking. And about 3 weeks later, something said, you need to go back and look at that. Go back and check that out. And I'm like, that wasn't my plan. That's not my plan. Go back and look at that. That's not my plan. Go back and look at that. So I did. And so the rest is history. I signed on with that firm here in Winston-Salem area. And at 57, reinventing myself and building a new practice and a new life and taking care of my dad.
What does all of that feel like?
Sometimes I wonder, what am I doing? And I have to ask myself and the Lord all the time, why am I here? What did you bring me here for? Because it hasn't been easy.
Right.
Coming from a large city like Dallas, Texas, which is where I relocated from, to a small city like Winston-Salem, it's a big shock. It's a change, and so it's been a challenge getting connected, getting networked, finding your niche, getting your groove. But it's coming, and I feel it coming.
Starting to
feel the flow.
Can you tell us about the conference that you just helped put together?
God. So there's a classmate of mine. His name is Richard L. Williams. He is the publisher and founder of Black Business Inc. magazine. This year it celebrated 15 years of publishing. Richard is very connected in the community. very instrumental in bringing Black business to light. And he's done 3 conferences already. And he thought that it would be appropriate to culminate his 15 years with a 4th. And it was called the 2018 State of Black North Carolina Conference. It was magnificent. He asked about a half a dozen people to be on his steering team, and I was one of the people he asked. It culminated on a Wednesday evening on May the 9th with a gala at the Stevens Center, North Carolina School of the Arts, Stevens Center, where we recognized 50 of the most influential African Americans in the Piedmont Triad.
Oh, that's so cool.
We had the Hamiltons as entertainment. We also had Vanessa Ferguson, who's a celebrity from The Voice.
I was going to say, I've heard that name.
Yes, Vanessa, she's out of Greensboro. And then we had Michael Collier, who was our MC, and he's a well-known, world-renowned comedian. It was a really great event. And then it picked back up. It picked back up the next day on Thursday with panels, a Trailblazer luncheon, panels after the lunch. That Friday with 2 more panels, women's empowerment luncheon on Friday, and it finished with 2 panels at the end of the day.
What's it like being on a steering committee for something so big?
There were a lot of moving parts.
Right.
From registration to sponsorships to speakers to luncheons to panels. We had 4 panels with 5 to 6 panelists and a moderator. So that was 48 to 50 people that we had to ask, coordinate, come up with the questions. Then we had registration to manage. Then we had sponsors, we had advertisement, we had marketing, we had the luncheons, we had the speakers. Oh, the gala. The gala was a production. We had 600 people. Black tie with the VIP reception at the gala. And then we had receptions each night after the conference. So it was I think we didn't realize what we were getting ourselves into. And Richard is such a visionary. He had the vision for all of this. So we were the tactical team that just kind of helped put his vision into place and to have it materialize, and it was amazing. And I always tell people, when you volunteer for things, watch what I say. You will get more out of it as a volunteer than you put in.
Can you talk about as a business owner, getting yourself out there? Because a lot of people that have an entrepreneurial spirit listen to this podcast, or will be listening to this podcast, and they're all hungry to know what works. So what are you seeing that's been working for you as an entrepreneur in connecting and making sure not just that you're connecting, but that you're finding people that you're excited to work with?
I think you have to start by doing everything and then stepping back and saying, what's working for me? Because I started out, I joined or attended a lot of networking events, a lot of networking groups. I mean, there's tons of them here. Going to a lot of events, whether it was a networking event, an educational event, a forum, just getting out there and in everything. And then once you've been to certain things a couple of times, maybe 2 or 3 times, you get a sense of what's working and what's not.
Right.
Because you can't do everything. And one thing I've learned from this one networking group that I will belong to forever is that you have to be intentional and deliberate. You have to identify, what is it I'm trying to achieve? What kind of people do I want to meet? And who do I need to connect with? And so I literally had to step back from one group and say, this is a referral group. It's based on a give and take. I give referrals and I get. And I'm not running in the right circles to give you all the right referrals. And so it's not fair for me to stay in this group if I can't give you the referrals that you need to run your business. Because it has to be a give and take. It has to be 50-50. And so I stepped back from a couple of groups that I didn't feel were I was being of value to and that I was getting any value from. And so you have to be able to say, I'm looking for this kind of person. My business needs this kind of client. Is this the place that I'm going to find those clients? And be intentional about it. And you can't be everywhere, and you can't accept all invitations either. What's in it for you? That WIIFM, what's in it for me? Even though it may sound selfish and egotistical, it's really true when you're an entrepreneur. What's in it for you? What are you gonna get out of it? What do you want to get out of it? Is that the place to get what you want? And if it's not, then reevaluate and say, is that the place for me?
Right.
And you have to, and some people will say, well, I serve everybody. Oh, no, you can't serve everybody. You can't be everything to everybody. So that goes to targeting your market. Who's your client? Who's your ideal client? What do they look like? What do they smell like? How do they dress? Where do they live? Where do they work? And then where can you meet that person, that client, that individual? Did that
absolutely
answer? Okay.
That's great. I think that will be a very helpful answer.
Okay. Good.
What is one thing you've done recently that scared you and taken courage, but you're glad you've done?
I think the conference. I really do, because I didn't know anyone on that steering committee. I didn't even know who I was going to be on the steering committee with till I got there. And I just knew Richard. But I knew that it had the potential to help me. And every time I went to a meeting, it was scary because I still didn't quite know everybody. And I came out of there with a lot of new friends, not a new acquaintances, and some potential clients, I'm hoping, as well. It was scary. Some people would have said, well, no, I can't help you with that because I don't know the city, I don't know the places, I don't know the people. But I'm a risk taker. And I knew that I had nothing to lose by participating in that and everything to gain. So that was scary because I didn't know anybody. And they didn't know me. They didn't. And this is a different environment where outsiders are kind of hard to penetrate. But I stuck it out anyway. So that was scary, but you have to remember that once you do one thing you're fearful of, it makes it easier to do the next thing you're fearful of. And so the fear gets less and less and less. Now, when the fear stops, then it's time to do something else.
Absolutely.
So you're not complacent and you're not comfortable. So you should always have some butterflies in your stomach about something. Meaning that means it's new, it's challenging, it's growing you. So I guess now I'm like, okay, what's the next big fear that I've got to surmount?
Do you have any idea what that is?
Not yet. Building my practice is a fear every day for me, though.
Right.
It is a constant fear because it's a constant having to reach out to someone. Having to share what I can help them with, what I can do, how I can help them. And then there's that rejection that may come from that.
Right.
There's always that thank you but no thank you that could come at the other end of the phone or the other end of a lunch or the other end of a coffee. So for me, being my practice, but I think entrepreneurs, we're always going to be fearful because we're always trying to grow our business. We're always trying to grow ourselves and expand and do different things. So I think there's always entrepreneurship is innately fearful.
My favorite thing about what you're saying right now is that there is fear, but do it anyway. Mm-hmm. How do you personally feel the fear and do it anyway?
I think about what's the worst that can happen. What's the worst that can happen if I pick up the phone and call somebody I don't know? Right. What's the worst thing that can happen if I call someone that was referred to me? what's the worst thing that can happen if I go to this networking event that I've never been to? And then I can say, well, that you've done that before. That's happened before.
Right.
And the worst thing that can happen is they tell you no, or you don't connect with someone, or it's not the right place, or it's not the right thing, and then you start over again. It's not a death sentence.
Yeah.
It's not a death sentence. Yeah.
I remember in sales often hearing the phrase, some will, some won't, next.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And they also used to tell us in sales, a no doesn't mean no, it means not now.
Right.
And that it takes 3 to 5 touches for someone to accept your invitation.
Mm-hmm. And there's even research to show that it can be up to 17 touches.
Wow. So for me, it's a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
It's keeping track of the touches, of the phone calls, of the no's. And there's one thing I used to do in Mary Kay, or they taught us to do in Mary Kay, was to keep track of your phone calls, of your skincare classes, of your results. And so I knew that if I held 30 appointments, I knew I would average $100 a sale. I knew that I would average 1 to 2 new customers out of those 30 appointments. And so once you get to a place where you're tracking your numbers and you see a pattern, then you know your target.
Right.
So I had a goal of, in addition to the commission I made on my sales team, I had a sales goal of $3,000 every month. So I knew that if I averaged $100 per face, I had to see 30 women. Bingo. So I didn't stop in my month until I got to 30 women, or I served 30 clients. It's the same thing with my practice. How many phone calls do I have to make to get one appointment?
Right.
Once I get one appointment, how many appointments do I have to make to get a second one? And once I get a second one, how many second ones do I have to do to get a client? So if you're in a sales position, I think all entrepreneurs are in sales.
Absolutely. And I would argue that every single one of us, no matter who you are, no matter what your profession is, you are in sales.
You are in sales. Everything that's around you was sold to you by someone.
Right.
So if you think of yourself, irregardless of how bad it may sound, you're a saleswoman. And so start tracking your activity. Mm-hmm. And then once you start to see a pattern, then you know what you're shooting for.
Right.
Which makes it a lot easier. A lot easier.
I think the sales training that came out of Mary Kay, and mind you, I was in sales in the financial industry for a decade. The sales training that I got as a consultant in Mary Kay was hands down the best sales training that I ever received.
I agree. Mary Kay gives you a foundation.
Absolutely.
It gives you a foundation for sales. It gives you a foundation for life. It gives you a foundation for personal development. It was amazing. I mean, there's still things. My sales director, the woman that recruited me, always used to tell me, have a sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. I got so tired of her saying, Cynthia, have a sense of urgency. Have a sense of urgency. It drove me crazy. But I've coined it. Have a sense of urgency. Meaning, don't do tomorrow when you can do this moment. Right now. And then we talked about IPAs. Income producing activities.
Yes.
Is what you're doing this very moment producing an income for you. If it's not, stop. Or allocate a certain amount of time to it and then move on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Mary Kay is a phenomenal company for the basics of sales training, of personal development, confidence building. And she was a phenomenal woman.
Yeah.
Just a phenomenal woman.
Her biography is still, to this day, one of my absolute favorites. Biographies. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. A woman on a mission.
Yeah.
Changing lives.
That's right. They do.
Yes. Changing lives.
Do you feel like the work that you're doing right now is the work that you most want to be doing?
Oh, no, you didn't ask me that question. No, you didn't ask me that question.
If you would prefer to not answer
that.
Oh,
no, I need to answer that.
Okay.
You know, it's ironic but I'm sure it's divine that you asked me that question, because I'm in this season of my life. I'm questioning. I'm searching. Mm-hmm. I know that what I'm doing now, I'm doing it for a reason and for a purpose. I know that it has a purpose, and I know that taking care of my dad in his older years and with his dementia issues is my primary purpose. But I know without a shadow of a doubt that what I'm doing work-wise is not what I'll be doing 10 years from now. Maybe even 5 years from now.
So if your older self could come give you advice about this portion of life, what would you need to hear from her?
Oh, that's an awesome question, Alicia. That's powerful. Patience. Be patient, my dear. Continue to learn. Continue to grow. Continue to make lives better, because that's what I'm doing. I'm making lives financially better.
Right.
And continue to seek that which is the ultimate call in your life.
What do you think that is?
Teaching, speaking, writing. I love to write. Facilitating the success that is already within women. Mm-hmm. And making people's lives better still. That's still the underlying call I have on my life.
And what's so cool about where you are in life and in business right now is I bet that you can either hone those skills to be ready to launch into that next thing, or you can start bringing more of that into your current work.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find the balance, though. See, the engineer in me is so black and white. Well, you can either do that or you can do that. You can't do both of those.
That engineer is lying to you. Liar!
Thank you. Thank you. Because that's my struggle. You know, my struggle is I'm such a perfectionist that I want to give my all to, and I keep telling myself, you can't chase two rabbits. You know, you can't go down a cornhole. You know, you got to stay focused, stay in your lane. And so I'm struggling with, how do I do the work I'm called to do now while still preparing to do the work that is going to ultimately be my work? Mm-hmm. So that's a great question, and I need to continue to hear my older self step outside of myself and think back and say, okay, now how can I take what I'm doing now? And I've started to do some of that, actually. Don't tell anybody in my office that. But I've started to do some things in preparation for that, because one thing that God told me when he called me to move here was to get prepared. And my mantra is, success happens when preparation meets the opportunity.
Yes. I firmly believe that. And
so whenever Spirit says, do X, Y, Z, because I need you to get prepared, that's what I do. So going back to before I moved here, the Lord said, I need you to move. And I need you to move before you get a job and not wait like you think you should. But I need you to be prepared so that when your house sells and you quit your job, that you're ready to go. And so I did. I packed, gave notice, put my house on the market. So by the time my house sold, within 2 weeks, I was ready to go. From Dallas, Texas to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I had movers already lined up. I had a storage facility in place. I had everything I needed so that when we signed on the dotted line, I think I sold my house on July 2nd and I moved August 2nd and I moved August the 3rd. I was ready. So I take that same thing into what I'm doing now and into preparation for where I'm going, is continue to do the preparation work.
Yes.
So that when it's time, you just turn around the sign, so to speak.
Yes.
And say, I'm open. That's a great question. Thank you for asking
You'll
that.
get there.
Okay.
You can do it.
Okay, I believe it. I believe
you can too. You are dynamite. I know you can do it.
Thank you.
What would you tell your high school or college self?
Wow. To determine as early as possible, before you get out of high school, what your God-given talents are. What do you do effortlessly? And I've been struggling with lately talent versus passion versus talent. And I've come to the conclusion that passion is not enough. It's not enough to know your passion and follow it, but to know what you're good at. What's your talent? What are you so good at that people say, "Oh, wow, you're great at that." Or you step back and say, "I did that." So early on, to determine what your talents are and get, not just to get good at them, but to get great at them. Mm-hmm. To get great at them. And then while you're getting great at your talent, then find out what you're passionate about. What makes you, what keeps you up at night? What makes you cry? What do you want to change? What do you want to make happen? That's your passion. And then what are you great at? So how do you take that greatness, meld it with that passion, turn it into action, and change the world, and change where you live and what you do? So I kind of, it was early on in high school where I started to develop what I was good at, but it wasn't till several years down the road that I realized what I was good at. But if I had really had somebody say, "Come on now, let's really focus. Let's really focus on what it is you do well, and let's hone that. Let's make that excellent." I'd be in a different place, I think.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I think that's what's so great about our younger generation now, is they're finding out early what they're good at, what they love doing, and they're doing it, and they're not taking no for an answer. Mm-hmm. And nobody's telling them you can't. They already know they can. They told themselves they can. I can, so I am.
I love it. So what's one piece of advice or motto that you love and you use in your daily life that you'd like to share?
I think it goes back to the sense of urgency. Have a sense of urgency. So if you look down your to-do list, the hardest thing that you got to do that day, do it now. Get it out of the way when your energy's at its peak, and not put it off. "Oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, I don't want to do that." And then you look around, you haven't done it.
Right.
Have a sense of urgency about the most important things that need to be done in your day and in your life, and get them done. And don't put off today, put off for tomorrow what you can do today. That's probably my biggest thing.
I love it.
It allows me to pick up the phone when I don't want to pick up the phone.
Which is really important when you're in sales.
Yes. It's like, call that person now. Immediately.
It's great advice. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
So in terms of creativity, and I think all of us are creative beings. This is why I asked this question.
Okay.
I think every single one of us are creative beings, and everything that we do is infused with our creativity. So personally for you, what keeps you creating when you don't feel like it?
Well, first of all, you have to realize that I've never considered myself creative.
You are very creative. So for those that cannot see Cynthia, I mean, she is in here in the most gorgeous outfit, beautiful earrings, gorgeous necklace, glasses that match. I mean, just looks like on fire gorgeous. I mean, just the way you put your clothes together today is an act of creativity.
I guess you're right. I guess that's how I should look at it. And you're absolutely right. In my Mary Kay days, my sales director girlfriends would say, "Cynthia, just stop having to be so perfect. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. Let's do something different. Let's be spontaneous." And they knew that I couldn't stand to be spontaneous. Everything had to be planned. And that engineers, we don't think of ourselves as creative, because we have rules and regulations and formulas and principles and everything's laid out for us. And if it doesn't match that, it's not right. And so Mary Kay allowed me to be creative, actually, or bring out the creative in me.
Because it gave you that structure within the walls within which you could be creative.
That's right. That's true. That's true. It gave me a safe space to be creative. And I did come out of my shell, my non-creative shell. And so I guess one of the things I love is I like to write. And I'm a thinker. I'm a real deep thinker, just like the fact that everybody keeps saying follow your passion. But then I read a book and the guy said, don't follow your passion, follow your talent. And so I thought about that. And I'm like, okay, so if I follow my talent, but I don't want to ignore my passion, then if I meld those two and I add action to it, then that's success. So that's creative for me, coming up with my own ideologies. And I have a blog on Facebook. I have a page, not a page. I have a Facebook blog page, and I have a Facebook group, and they're both called Live Fully with Cynthia Reavis. And so the group allows me to be creative, and it's all about what resonates with me. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of in-your-face kind of stuff. It's not always feel good and fluffy. It challenges people. And then my Facebook page, which is actually a blog, is my creativity on my thoughts about things. So that helps me be creative, because financial services is not really creative. You know, you've got investment vehicles, you've got traditional investment vehicles, you've got insurance, you know, you've got basic traditional things, and you put people here or you put them there. So it doesn't really allow for a lot of creativity. So my Live Fully mantra, or my Live Fully alter ego, is how I'm creative.
So when you sit down to write, what's your process?
I think before I write. By the time I write, it's already written in my brain and in my heart. So like yesterday, I wrote, is passion all there is? But I had already written it in my mind and in my heart. And so it just came out. Mm-hmm. So I usually take something that resonates with me, something someone has said, something I read, and I think about it, and I put my spin on it. And then by the time I've written it or posted it, it's already been written in my heart and on my mind. That's my process. And it's not about what other people are going to think. For me, it's forcing people to think differently. That's what my blog posts are about. Forcing you to think differently. Perception, I think, is everything. How you perceive the world and how you perceive what people normally do and say you should or shouldn't do. And then kind of changing that a little bit. So yeah, I guess that's how I stay creative.
That's very creative.
By writing. Mm-hmm.
I'll be looking forward to watching you share that soon.
Okay.
And sharing all of those, not just in what you're currently doing by putting it out as a blog, but as you begin to share that in speeches mm-hmm. and workshops. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's coming.
That's a vision. That's actually a vision. It sure is. So that's why I'm keeping them, documenting them, because I know at some point they will be shared on that platform. You're right. You're right.
So, when was a time that you felt most wise?
Actually, not very long ago. Last year, in 2017, I felt most wise. About the latter half of the year, I started to find some relationships exhausting. Long-term relationships have become exhausting. They no longer gave me joy. They felt more like work, or I tended to feel there was unequal balance in the relationship. Like I was giving more and not getting, or I wasn't being valued. And so I had to take an inventory of a couple of relationships. And last year I became really powerful. When I say powerful, I mean I became strong. My voice became clearer. What I would and would not tolerate in my life became crystal clear to me. And I found that I had outgrown some relationships and some people. And when I say outgrown, I don't mean that I outgrew as in I outgrew the people. I outgrew their perception of who I was. And so when you're no longer who people perceive you to be any longer, they can become bitter and angry and jealous. And it causes dissension and dysfunction. So I realized that my power, my voice, my values, my boundaries were new to them, and they didn't know how to accept them, and they weren't ready. Mm-hmm. So I had to leave, and I say this, Nina Simone said this, and I say it, that I had to get up from some tables where I was no longer being served love. And it was hard. It wasn't pretty. Didn't feel good. It hurt. But it freed me. Gave me a lot of freedom to be able to say, this may be the end of the road for us. This is not working for me anymore. Mm-hmm. They may be revisited. Mm-hmm. There may be some amends or some mending that comes. But I went into 2018 so free and so clear on who I am and what I want and what I will accept and what I won't. And one thing I found too is that oftentimes when relationships become dysfunctional or not serving, we point the finger at the other person. And I had to point the finger back at myself. Because we don't set expectations. We get into relationships and we just let them run. And we don't set the expectation, or we don't set the boundaries. And when they start to become exhausting and dysfunctional and uneasy and tense, it's because we haven't told people what we need. We haven't told people how we value things and how we operate and who we are. And then we want to blame them. That's not their fault. So I realized that I hadn't shared with some people what I needed, mm-hmm. and what I needed from them and what I was willing to give to them. So I took ownership of that. But taking ownership doesn't mean you have to give in or shrink or become any less of a person or woman than you are.
Yeah.
So I became very wise last year, and I felt really empowered as a result of that.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
That's hard. That was hard.
Yeah. I think maybe a reason why I clicked with you so quickly mm-hmm. is because I could tell that you're a woman who knows, your core values, whether you have articulated them on paper or not, you know at a core what's important and what's not mm-hmm. important. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I work with clients on identifying and making sure then that once they've identified that they're living in alignment with those core values.
Yes.
And this is something that you just have demonstrated without using that language. Mm-hmm. You just said, this is no longer in alignment with my values.
That's right.
And that's so right. Beautiful.
And it I'm 57 and it's taking a long time to get to that realization. It's hard, but when you do, it's like you're awake. You become awake. That new phrase now is stay woke.
Right.
And so now that you're awake, stay woke.
Stay woke.
That's right. It's really critical that we as women own who we are and what we stand for and what we believe in. And it's just life's easier, mm-hmm. I think, when we do that. Life's easier. You don't have any regrets.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So what would you tell a woman who is currently doubting herself, maybe not feeling very wise or doubting her own power and wisdom?
I guess I would step back and kind of dig a little deeper and ask, where's that coming from? Is that self-imposed self-talk? Or is that something you've been receiving externally? And if it's something that you're self-imposing, why? What has led you to that place to believe that, to think that? Is it society saying you should be in a certain place, you should be looking a certain way, you should be doing a certain thing? Or is it someone telling you that? So let's separate it and let's get to the core of why you're not feeling confident, why you're not feeling wise, and address that first. Because just to say that is not enough without us knowing why, what space is that coming from. It's just like me feeling wise now. I didn't feel wise then because I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being who I truly am. So if you're not feeling wise, is it because you're not being able to be who you really are?
Right.
And then in what environment are you not able to be who you really are? And maybe that's the wrong environment for you.
Right. Maybe your values are out of alignment.
That values are out of alignment.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I would say to her to just do some soul searching, to work with you, to do some...
Thanks.
Yes, to work with you, just do some soul searching.
Right.
Get to the root of that. And then to work with you to identify what those values really are.
Right.
Yeah, and that's part of being wise.
Because that's how you stand in your power.
That's
is
right.
By living your values.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's how you can stand tall and powerful and confident. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So, do you practice yoga?
I love yoga!
What's your favorite yoga pose?
My favorite yoga pose is, well, I have two. My first favorite is child's pose. And I do child's pose every morning. It's the first pose I do. It allows me to stretch, to kind of get low. That's the first pose where I start to commune with God, is child's pose. And I just get all into it. I move my hips, and I move my arms, and I move my back, and my thighs, and my legs, and I wide leg child pose, and that's my favorite. But my next most favorite is pigeon. It's a hard pose. It's a really hard pose. But once you get into it, it's emotional for me. When I first started practicing yoga, which I didn't start practicing until I moved here 5 years ago, one of the first things I said I was going to do was I was going to find a church and I was going to find a yoga practice, and I did them both, and I've been practicing ever since. But once my yogi really showed me how to get into pigeon, I started crying a lot. And I'm like, oh my God, you're a wimp. And I hid it. I hid my tears, and I would bring tissue and stick them in my bra so that I could pull my tissue out and wipe and put my tissue back. And because I wanted to be prepared for pigeon. And so what I did one day, actually a particular practice, and it was just me and the yogi that day. So I said to her, Elizabeth, why am I crying? Why do I cry? She said, well, number one, we as women hold our emotions in our hips. And pigeon is a very hip-laden pose. It really stretches out your hips. And if you hold it long enough, which is what we do, it all starts to surface. So she said, it's okay. It's okay to cry. You're okay to cry. That's what this is all about. It's about finding yourself and becoming emotional and open. And so, yeah, pigeon is my second favorite, and then child's pose.
I love it. Those are two favorites of mine as well. And then my final question for you, second to last question.
Okay.
How do you live a life of abundance?
Well, I told you at the beginning that I'm very spiritual. I'm a Christian, God-fearing, God-loving woman, And I live a life of abundance by staying constantly in communication with God. I pray. I don't make any moves or any decisions without His guidance. Everything I do is based on my communication with the Lord. He knows all my secrets. He knows who I am. He knows my flaws. He knows my needs. He knows my loves, my desires. And I live a life of abundance by communing with Him minute by minute. I mean, I even prayed about this podcast today, that it would be anointed, that it would bless you, that it would bless your listeners, that it would help promote your practice and your business, but that I would always also be authentic here today. And so I live a life of abundance by staying in communion with Him. I live a life of abundance by taking care of my dad. It's hard work being a caregiver. But it also is very gratifying when you know that someone needs you, that they depend on you, that they love you for what you're doing for them. That gives me joy. So I try to find joy in everything. And I love people. I love people. I love women. And I live a life of abundance by personally caring for every person I meet, finding out everything I can about them. How can I serve them? What makes them tick? What they're going through? Can I pray for you? Can I help you? You know, just loving on people.
I love it.
That's the core of who I am.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for this time. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you for the deep questions.
Anytime.
Thank you for asking the questions that force us to really be authentic and to open up. That's really important.
Absolutely.
It's really important.
There's one thing I forgot to do at the beginning.
Yeah.
The cards.
The cards.
Would you like a card?
Yes, I would.
I would love to pull you a card.
Yes, pull me a card.
So, and I think I explained on the phone that I view these as a lens. A lens into where you are.
Okay. All right.
And the deck is split up into earth, wind, fire, air, water, and spirit. And so the earth, fire, wind, air, and water, those are all creatures of this earth that fall into one of those categories. But spirit are creatures that don't exist.
Ooh.
That don't exist on this earth.
On this earth. Okay. All right.
So just in case we find a spirit card in here. But okay. When you're ready with your left hand, cut the deck. And flip that one over.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
It's a hawk.
It's a beautiful card too. So a hawk is a spirit of the air. What I'll do is spirit, I'll just explain what the air cards mean.
Okay.
In general, they are creatures of the sky. So creatures of the air element move more quickly and decisively. They're known to see more than others, and this can lead to powerful and discerning qualities, as air creatures love movement and mobility. But the speed at which they move often leaves them ungrounded. So too many air cards, so if we were doing like a big reading, too many air cards would indicate too much movement and not enough earth.
Okay.
And some people describe that feeling as living in the head rather than in the body. It's difficult to make big decisions or remember our greater purpose when we lose our groundedness. So do whatever you need to reconnect to the physical realm. Slow walks in nature will help get your feet back on the ground. So that's the air in general. But the hawk itself...
that's pretty powerful, just what you said.
I know.
And I agree.
The hawk, watchful, all-seeing, messenger of divinity. The sharp eyes of the hawk watch our every move. This keen-eyed bird has the ability to see very little detail as well as the bigger picture. When this card appears, fate has its eyes on you. The winds are shifting.
Oh my.
It is said that the hawk carries news upon its wings and is sent from divinity itself to deliver it. The message should not be taken lightly. Though it may seem small or insignificant, it will eventually redirect your course. When in balance, seize clearly and intuitively. When out of balance, seize too much, suspicious. To bring into balance, a perspective shift. Interesting card.
Very interesting.
How does that land for you?
The all-seeing, because I'm very observant. Mm-hmm. I'm always, and I never speak unless I have something to say. I'm always observant first. The big picture, I always see the big picture. I'm always able to step outside of what somebody wants to accomplish and see the end first, and then bring it back in. The balance, I could relate to that right now, because I'm juggling, caregiving and my practice and trying to still get connected and get my footing here. So that's very relevant. The hawk is very relevant. I agree wholeheartedly.
Awesome.
Wholeheartedly.
I'm glad you got that lens today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast. I hope you were inspired by Cynthia's words of wisdom. If you've enjoyed this podcast, head over to iTunes, give us a review, and share this podcast with your friends so we can keep bringing wise words your way. Check out our website, yokeandabundance.com, for more words of wisdom, creativity tips, and information about our group and individual coaching programs. Looking for a powerhouse collective of like-minded women? Join the Yoke and Abundance Collective, a place for aspiring entrepreneurs, creatives, and seasoned business owners. In the YNA Collective, you'll get a discount on our next 3 in-person Wise Women panels, online goal-setting sessions, online monthly master classes to keep you on track, and a weekly mastermind that puts you in the hot seat to make sure you're achieving your biggest goals and dreams. For more information, visit yokeandabundance.com and visit the collective page. Now, tell us about your wise moments this week. When did you feel most wise this week? Tag us on Instagram with your wise moment from the week for a chance to have your wise words shared on this podcast. Use the hashtag #IamWise and hashtag #YokeandAbundance. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Cheney Properties, and our editor and producer, Ira Sterling at Julia Sound Recordings. Remember, every one of us has wisdom within. Keep sharing your words of wisdom because you never know who you'll inspire.